Hey guys, Johnny Guns here with a video on how to swap your CPU. So a lot of you guys are wondering, like, boy, you've heard a lot about downgrading and whatnot. If you have the right CPU, you've got the correct readings like NAND or whatever, you can actually swap the same CPUs from like Zephyr to Zephyr or Falcon to Falcon and actually downgrade your dash, believe it or not. And we're going to go through there's two things we're doing. We're actually repairing this because we've got a 0101 and all the connectors, the USBs are fine. From what I can tell, I could read the NAND through the south bridge, so it seems like everything's fine, honestly, except when you turn it on, the fans reset. You can hear the CPU resetting itself over again. It resets 3 times and then goes to 0101, the red ring here. So I'll show you here. I did do a reball on the GPU, and that went from, it was like a 0002, which is, I mean, that's a short of something. And then I reballed it and then went to 0101. Everything looks fine. So for the video, I'm going to swap the CPU, and if that doesn't work, I'll show you that it didn't. And like, what I mean by that is I'll still go through and show you what kind of error we get. If it's 00101, then we'll have to do a Southbridge swap, or we might reflow this. But I'm thinking everything's fine. This board is pretty mint, but anyways, enough talking. Let's go ahead. Actually, gotta unplug it. I'm not going to show you the red ring because it's already been diagnosed as a 0101. I'm not going to waste your time here, so we're going to go through. By the way, I did change some camera settings for this one. I've got this new camera, and my brother and I were actually going through and looking at the 60 frames per second, so we decided to use that tonight, and that's what we're going to use. It looks kind of cool. So, we'll get these guys out of here. But yeah, I've been just working and didn't have a chance to really bring this to you, but we're going to show you how to pull the CPU from an old board that we want to use and pull it from this one, a good board, without popping your all your capacitors right here. So here we are. Everything's been pre-cleaned beforehand. I just have, put all the heat sinks back on and all that good stuff. So we're gonna go through, get all the junk out of the way, just like before the other 2 videos, and we're gonna just clean everything off. Alright guys, just so if you're wondering, the solution I'm using is methyl ethyl ketone, and I said that in the last 2 videos, and I just thought I'd keep saying it here. That is methyl ethyl ketone, MEK. Once again, I'll show it on camera so you can see what it looks like. And this was from, I believe I got this from Lowe's here in the States. So that's what I'm using to clean things up. So alright, let's go ahead and I'll get a tight shot for you. We're going to get these epoxy bonds off of here, and just like last time, we're going to use our AU A52A, and we're going to power those off. Now, a lot of you have thought, well, what about these capacitors? We'll show you this later, how to successfully shield these, so when you're pulling this with infrared on the top, you're not going to blast these apart. On the old board, you're not going to see as much protection as I've said before. It's just not really necessary unless you want to save these. Okay, here we are. Here's the tight shot, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our AU, and you can see that I'm using this size tip here to get a concentrated blast right on these guys here. So be careful when you're heating this up. I like to take my AU and go up to, I leave it at the air setting of 5, or F51, that's what my AU says. And I bring the temperature up to 230. That seems to be the best setting where you don't get tons of heat applied to the chip. And I'll start on this corner here. So just apply a little bit. Once the board gets heated up from the first 3, you'll find that each one is a little easier. Just a little pressure. Try to keep this little dowel towards the chip instead of just pressing away. The newer your console is, you'll find this epoxy has been strengthened. I don't know if they changed the chemical structure of it, but man, it's a lot harder on some of the newer boards versus like Xenons and all that. So the first one usually comes off tougher than usual. Yeah, I'm getting plenty of heat. Board's pretty cool out here. It's probably in the 60s now, finally. So it does take a little bit for things to get heated up so they come off a little easier. Some of these are just a pain, no matter which. You could be blasting it with like 400 Celsius and it'll still stay on there. Usually not though. This is the best way to take these off. If you do it without heat, boy, it's a real bear. I've done it before and it's just, you risk cutting a trace if you use anything metal or just, you know, knocking off a surface component. Just invest in a hot air station or a little hot air wand. Something that you can have put a tip on like this and get some concentrated heat right on the epoxy. Then you won't get frustrated. But the CPU, while we're doing this, the CPU does take a bit more temperature. They're stubborn little guys. They like a little more temperature to get them pulled off. And you really need to dress them up before you blast them here. Put some infrared. You want to make sure those capacitors are nice and covered. Usually it's about 3 layers or so. And also what you want to be careful of, if you've already reballed your GPU, you want to make sure that you're not interfering with that. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Just got one more. Sometimes they won't come off clean. You'll have to scrape out the top of it here and then go back through once or twice. You want to make sure you get most of it, about 95% of it off. As long as it's not touching the board and the chip, you're good. This board's been the most finicky board ever. Taking these little things off, I still have residue sitting on the board from the epoxy. So we're done doing that. We've got all those off. So I don't recommend using metal if you're inexperienced. What I mean by that, I don't mean to call you like a noob. I'm just saying, like, if you really haven't been around the board that much, try not to use metal around these, but I use it because it's the best to get this epoxy out of there. Like, there is some lingering between the chip. I just use that to get the tiny bit of residue left out of there. See, there's a little bit right there. A little bit right here. So the reason why I think this is a CPU problem is because when I got this console, actually I pulled it apart and there was no CPU heatsink. And you can tell once you've done enough consoles and you've fried CPUs and, I don't know, done a bunch of experimenting, you'll notice, you'll know what the actual thermal paste looks like when it's actually been overheated. And it looked overheated. The whole top of this was kind of like a weird discolored, thermal paste looks weird when it's overheated. So I wish I would have taken a picture of that so I could show you, but So I think the CPU has been burned up in this. That is my opinion on this board. So we'll see. I've got another pre-NXE chip that we're going to put on it. So this looks like it's all, let's take a look here. It's off. If any residue is still sitting there, just fire up your hot air wand. Careful with your capacitors. Go through and heat this up a little bit. I know you really can't see what I'm doing here, but there's a little bit of residue stuck between the chip and the base. So this little tool, I can heat this up and disconnect that epoxy. Yep, there's a little bit left there. Good. There's just a little bit left back here. Like I said, usually these just peel right off with 230 Celsius, but this board, the GPU, I had to spend a little extra time to make sure all the residue is gone in between. The chip usually pulls out at the same time. So we're done there, and what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the next shot. Usually what I do is I take the board and I just flip it, like how you do flapjacks, to get all the plastic off of it. I usually sweep the shop twice a week, so I'll show you what I'm talking about. You take it and then make sure you're clear of any objects, and you just kind of like flip it like that and get all that epoxy out of there. And afterwards, you don't have to, but I usually take a Q-tip and wipe the board down a little bit. Alright, now to get it all dressed up. Okay, so first things first, what we want to do is put a kind of our first coat on, if you will. I've got my Kapton tape here, and I bought a dispenser from Staples that handles these bigger rolls, and it was about 33 bucks for that. I got one of these. It's super nice. Now I can just kind of like gauge it. So what we want to do is kind of put on, get it down to the base as much as you can of the board. And I kind of like to loop it around like this and loop this around. And what you can do is put another little bit here, put it kind of towards the top, if not halfway, and kind of loop it down around like this. So there's that. This guy takes a little bit more, so once again try to fit it all the way down. Another piece about the same length, halfway up about, loop it down over the top, and I recommend doing it for all three spots here. So we'll do this. This one has a lot of little guys mixed together here, coil, another coil. Wrap our ones this way, that way, pinch these in a little bit, and the one on the top. Just got this, that's good. And we don't really need any more. This is the first layer. If you'd like, all the heat's being transferred out this way. If you'd want to put some more on the other end, that wouldn't hurt really. But typically I just do the two. One for the sides and one to wrap over the top. And this one may take up to 3 pieces to do that. The next part really is your shielding. With this tape here. So let's go ahead and start doing that. This is kind of tricky at first. The first 4 pieces you put on, it's a little tricky, and I'll show you why. Because to get it seated down here, there's a whole bunch of resistors right here. There's resistors right here. You've got these, they kind of stick to the tape when you're trying to position it, and I'll show you that. So usually you can just eyeball it and you can grab your scissors and cut out a couple pieces here. I'm going to try to keep all tape away from this. This is, since we're going to be going up to probably around 230 Celsius, maybe even a tad bit higher. These are brutal. These can handle that, these CPUs. But try to get it at the best temperature, you know, don't go nuts with it, but try to keep your tape away from a reball GPU or anything that, you know, touches it, because this guy's going to be, you know, pretty much liquefied way before we hit temps to get this lead-free stuff melted down. So just keep that in mind. You really don't need too much shielding this way. It's mainly this area right here. So what we want to do is, if you can see that, it's kind of like when you're positioning it, it's like, oh, come on. It's kind of weird. It's steep. It's steeper than you're used to if you're doing the GPUs quite a bit to get that in. So I keep it there. So the first layer you can kind of lay it against a little bit. As you build up on your layers, you kind of want to flour it out. If you've seen that before, the more we put on, we'll put more up and away. So actually it won't be touching the tops of these at all. That's been the best for me anyways. I mean, there's quite a few different ways to go about doing it. Some people actually have these cool little things that they pre-make, actually, that will sit over the capacitors already. It's like a super heavy-duty shield thing. I've seen Martin C have a pretty neat setup there with having shields over everything without having to mess with the tape. So here's the tape way of doing things, at least. But you'll find some pretty cool stuff on the internet, actually. If you go ahead over to WNY Console's site there, he's got some videos doing GPU swaps and whatnot, so that's pretty interesting to watch that. So this is what I like doing. I like doing it the tape way. I just haven't taken the time to build myself little shields. It would be nice to get your hands on some of that astronautical or NASA stuff, you know, the stuff they use for the spacesuits that, you know, there's no heat transfer. That'd be sweet. Make yourself a nice shield. I'll let you know if I ever run across that stuff and how much it costs. Probably cost as much as my whole shop put together. So, once again, I try to get as close to the chip as I can without interfering with operations here. And just so I don't have a huge cleanup when I'm done. This is just the, there's actually like, there's going to be a layer of Kapton, and then there's going to be 3 layers of reflectant tape. And this one here, on the left that you see, or your right, we're going to try to place this so it doesn't even touch that GPU. We don't even want to mess with that. If it was lead-free, then I wouldn't be too worried about it. Since I reballed it just the other day, I don't want to end up, you know, fixing the CPU, then having that get knocked around and it turn into a 0102 or something ridiculous. Because I have done that before. I fixed other parts of the board, and already parts that were already reballed were, you know, messed up because I touched something. First stages of, you know, doing this here. Here we are. Make sure that's not touching the chip, but we're shielded. So that's the first stages. Let's go and get 4 more pieces going. That's worth doing this. It's the best result to do this, because if you don't, you're going to pop capacitors, and that's just a big pain. Once again, I've said this 3 times already. They don't smell nice at all. Your family will come running out to the shop or whatever, like, oh my goodness, something's burning up. Like, no, it's just just my capacitors. They're blowing up on me. So then I do it about almost halfway up. I position another piece like this. I like to do it about halfway, and I try to get as close as I can to this one right here. You'll see what I'm talking about. I kind of join these up. This one, you don't have to worry about too much of this. Like the last layer, actually, you'll have some extra long pieces. Try to match these up a little bit. about halfway. Sometimes you'll find it ripping. See, my finger just ripped through this. That's not a problem. What you do is you just carefully peel back a little bit, because you don't want to have holes or whatever. You want all your layers to count. Just make sure they're sealed. Halfway out again. It doesn't matter too much on this side. It's mainly this right here, but I just do everything equal pretty much, just to make sure. So once again, we'll grab some really long pieces this time, and I'll show you why. So now we'll actually almost do it at the top. Until near the top. And you'll see what I'm going to do. I'm not going to leave it so outrageously like vertical like this. You'll see in a second. These are the pieces that you want to be the longest at the end, and I'll show you why. Because what I'm doing is I'm building up kind of like a shield on the top of the capacitors. That's, you know, where all the heat's coming from here. It's right at the top angle. It's going towards the top. And if you can kind of see, when you're looking underneath here, I'll have to get a shot for you, but when you're looking underneath, you can see how this is kind of building up like a dish over them. It's like the more and more I put on, the more it's, you know, it will be keeping the heat away from the top of them. You can actually see there's actually quite a bit of gap right there. I can actually run my finger in there, and that's kind of what you want there, keeping all the heat reflected up here instead of, you know, down in there. And you can kind of bend this down a little bit once you're done. Like I said, this side doesn't matter a whole lot. You could pretty much be done right there. Once again, I'm going to put a little more and get a little more width over the GPU just so we keep that heat off of there. Kind of makes me laugh. It reminds me of like a football stadium. Here you are looking in, you've got your field and your bleachers. I don't know. It's just kind of funny looking with all the tape on it and stuff like that. It looks kind of ridiculous, but that's it pretty much. And just make sure everything's kind of sealed and taped together, nothing's flapping around. That's pretty much it. You can kind of flex this over a little bit if you'd like, kind of level it off. But make sure you have a little space above those caps. It's still going to get hot under there, and you may still see some swelling. Even with this much tape, you still might see some stuff puff up a little bit afterwards. But that's a lot better than just going at it with an IR, a top heater. And I'll show you here in a second. We'll get it fluxed up. Now it's kind of difficult getting your probe in there, so I would do it now. So what we'll do is we'll grab the probe from my little Ideal multimeter. I know what you guys are thinking. You're saying, why don't you replace that thermocoupler? You beat it up to heck. I'm like, yep, you're right. So once again, we're going to take a little swath here, and we're going to get that probe seated. Now, I think usually what I do is, because the other probe off the machine will sit this way, I'm going to tuck this in this way. I'm going to try to bend it in as close as possible. The nice thing is these surface mount components underneath are taped down like crazy, so No worries with them moving around. Don't pull your tape until your board is like pretty much room temperature. That's another thing too. There's just too many things that could be lifted. So if you can see here, I'm going to get a tighter shot and I'll show you how I've got this set up. You can see the probe is kind of halfway bent in. Like that. You can see how that's put in there. So we'll get a tight shot and I'll show you. We'll get it flexed up. Alright guys, just like last time, this is my Kingbo RMA 218. And we're just going to do what we always do. For a lift, I put a nice bead all the way around it. Don't worry about the thermocoupler, just power on by. Don't go overboard and get a ton all over the place, just beat it up nicely. Like that. So you can see how that's done, just like before. That will do it. The heat, it sucks all into the chip, and then you can see it working when we fast forward. So off the top of the chip. Alright, so now we'll get this over to the Scotle. We'll go through the profile and fast forward, and I'll show you how this is done here. Alright guys, here we are at the Scotle. Pardon the mess, I've been experimenting big time every night after work, so I've got everything thrown around like a mad scientist in here. But let's take our board that we want to work on here. Thing is, now we're actually flipping the board towards us, so we got to do some repositioning. So we'll go ahead and start. This is for a GPU reflow reball setup right now, as you can see. So what we're going to have to do is get this probe situated, and what we'll do is we'll fit it in the first notch here. I'm going to have to move this guy. I'll get out of the way so you can see. So I got that one down. This is going to have to move a little bit. I always pick the most outer side hole for the board. I don't mess around with anything other than that, like putting on the ones on the inside here. So I can feel that we need some more adjustment. Things are rocking a little bit. So we also have to look down and we have to pop both of these and be careful, lift it up a little bit so your supports don't scrape along the bottom. Okay, doing pretty well here. Good. What I like to do is tighten one down and then untighten one and pull a little bit just to get a little tension. So that's pretty good. Go through and check my supports. Good. Oh, these are nice. They're already flush. Alright, good. So then what we'll do here is raise this up a little bit, make sure this is out of the way. We'll see how this looks. Alright, so that's how she's going to look here. I'm going to try to get a good shot so you can see. That's pretty much how it looks. It will sit right over it. So that's it. We'll get the machine fired up, we'll get a closer look, and I'll find the best angle so you can actually see something here. Alright guys, wanted to give you a quick pre-shot of before we fit the top IR heater over the top. Still have my cooling fans on from last time. And let's double check, make sure we've got our bottom nozzle up there to where we need it to be. You can see there's our probe right here. So you can't really see much when it's down like this. So what we're going to do actually is I'm going to reposition the camera, see if we can get a better shot. This position, you really can't see much unless you are over on this side right here. So we're going to shoot in from this angle, and what we're going to do as well, let's bring this up, this light out. Get our probe set here. So that's that. She's centered. Nozzle's good. All my probes, we gotta plug in the probe here. So remember, we still have to clean the base of this board. We still have to we have to pull the chip from the other board, the actual CPU that's good. We still got to pull that one, and we still got to clean everything off of that chip, reball it, and then reseat it to this one. So there's a little bit. I mean, it's the same thing as reballing. It's just this takes a little bit longer, doing all the taping and making sure everything's, you know, like really nice and secure there, safety-wise, like for the heat and whatnot. Alright guys, that's the best angle I can get for you, so you can at least see something, but at least so you can see everything fast-forwarded, you'll be able to see how the flux dissipate underneath the chip and all that good stuff, so let's do it. Alright guys, we're pretty much at target temps for a GPU, but for a CPU we've got to go a little bit more. See, I'm touching it here. My machine's at 220 and my probes are at 212. So we need to go almost up to 225, 230 about. I'll let you know exactly what I hit. That's usually what I have to go up to, like 232 on the probes. Some people may think that's crazy, but I don't believe it's... I've never had any problems with those CPU swaps going that high. And that's what it needs to hit, actually. It has to be quite a bit higher. We have nothing. We're at 220. We're a little hotter on the machine's thermocoupler. 227, 228, 228. That's where we're at this time. So what we want to do is hit our vacuum, grab our pen. Our profile's still going. That's fine. We'll bring this up and over. I always hit the light when I do that. And for camera view, we'll go ahead and lift. There we are. And we'll hit off on the profile. Also drop the chip onto a, this chip doesn't really matter, but I drop them always onto a heat sink. So IR cool, vacuum off, get this light out of the way. And let me get you a better angle actually of the ball grid array. Alright guys, here we are. This is the CPU's ball grid array. And it's actually a little easier. It's smaller and it's all condensed into one solid BGA. It's not broken apart with the center mass there and the outside. So we're going to throw some flux on there. Once again, like I said before, the Scotle has that lower nozzle that keeps blowing and it cools it right down literally. As soon as you pull your profile off or when you hit the off button, it starts cooling down the board. So that it's got a super fast fan that keeps blowing up. I mean, it's still pretty hot. Like, you can't touch anything, but you can see it doesn't really melt down as fast as if that fan was off. But no problem. Alright, so what we're going to do before we do the braid, we're actually going to use some MG chemical solder I'm using here, which is the 6337. We're going to use a clean tip soldering iron here, my Echo, the blue one I've been using through all of them. We're going to get some on there. And it's a little more difficult because you're working at angles much sharper than before. So just do your best, take it easy. This just helps you be a little more efficient. And if it starts bridging up on you, there's plenty of flux on there. But just bring your soldering iron down a little bit and let it heat up on that area on the BGA. Looks like we have enough flux there for the braid, but it looks like we're lacking here. And what happens with these syringes is if you actually are touching an area, it'll curl over. Like if you're way up here, it'll actually come out just fine like that, if you're wondering. Alright, so let's go ahead and we'll do what we've done before. Once again, this is going to look a little awkward. I'm on camera, and also it's awkward in general because you've got these high-walled, taped off areas. Just like usual, just glide through, don't scrub it. Your solder wick is going to fill up a lot faster. You can see in the light that we've actually got quite a bit on there. Maybe not on video, but in real life you can actually see that that piece of braid got used up quite fast, just on that little area. And let's say this is kind of awkward for how things are going here. You can also cut off the braid a certain length of it and use your tweezers. And go back to work. Once again, if you're getting into this, invest some money into a decent soldering station with all the right tips and everything. You'll find yourself getting frustrated if you're doing it my way. Like, I've just been slowly but surely picking up new pieces and parts to the shop, so it's a work in progress. I just want to let you know that if you have the money, invest in a better station. What I'm going to do, I know I shouldn't do this for the video for lighting purposes, but I'm going to turn that off. You can still see it, but what's happening is this area, there's too much airflow underneath, so therefore I can't get a decent pull. So we'll turn that fan off and you'll see I can actually do this a little bit faster. That's when you know you have to trim your solder wick, is when you're bleeding off a little excess solder. Just trim that up, clean your tip a little bit. This braid is so good that it just soaks up everything, and there's quite a bit of solder still on this, even though you pull it down, since it's all condensed like this. See, I could pull this a lot faster without that fan going. This you might have to pass through a couple times. For cleaner, smoother pass-throughs, just trim your wick often. Once again, I like to do the edges quite a bit, because that seems to be the place where they're neglected a little bit. So over time you'll get used to doing that. Okay, I think we've done enough to where we're pretty much to where we want to be. Let's grab a couple Q-tips. Don't even bother with the MEK, just kind of swath through it small enough to where you can actually, with one end, go through almost half of it. Just pick up that burn up stuff. I did not feel anything snag as I went over. Well, maybe right there a little bit. So I think we're at a decent temperature where I can feel, and it is, there's a whole little swath right here that we still have to grab, and you can see it right on camera actually. That should be just enough flux actually on there so we can actually move right through that. Feels pretty much smooth. We'll go through it one more time. You can tell when you go through with your saturated cotton tip here with the MEK, once you start cleaning off the other stuff, you can actually feel everything. It won't glide as much. I mean, it will, but you'll definitely be able to tell if there's any raised pads. It's looking pretty good. Just going to take a look here. It's looking real good actually. Alright. Just give it a little feel here. Be careful, lightly go across. Go through another couple passes with the MEK, make sure she's nice and clean. That way we can come back, just set the chip down on a fresh glaze of Kingbow there. But that's it, it's not too bad, honestly. Pulling it and it's fun, I enjoy it. It's just if you don't shield properly, you can have a pain in the rear with all those caps doing something. So we'll take a quick peek at the caps, see how they look under here. Nothing at all. We don't even have to worry about that there anyways, there's no caps. There's absolutely nothing, no swelling or anything with this setup. So that's kind of nice. Look through that and we're good. So there it is, all cleaned off. All the pads have been cleaned off. It's flush with the actual board here. Once again, I'm going to go through one more time. And I'm going to get up a little closer and look, angle the white. I do not see anything out of place, no pads are lifted. You'll see different colorations or variations of color on the board. It's a little darker here and a little darker here. It looks like, you know, something crazy is going on, but that's just the way the board looks underneath the chip. No problem. Once again, you guys are going to kill me. I'm going to go through. We're ready to rock with that. So let's go ahead and we'll back out. We'll get this board off, then we'll get the junk board on with a good CPU. Once again, you are going to need your NAND dump. There's been a kind of like a myth about, oh, you need to actually pull the whole NAND chip off. No, that's not true. All you have to do is, actually here in a second, what you do when you do a CPU swap, you just read the NAND. That's all you got to do is actually just get a copy of your NAND, save it to a file somewhere, you know, CPU swap or whatever, but all you have to do is wire in your NANDX or a JR programmer, whatnot there, and just pull a copy of your NAND, and that's all you need. You don't have to finagle, because sometimes this can be a pain. I'll be honest with you, like if you actually have to do physical NAND chip swaps, the flash mem here, my goodness, if you're not used to it, I've actually done quite a bit of that before even doing Xboxes, so, but even then, it still can be a pain. You can fry your chip if you don't have, low melt alloys to pull these. You can actually burn the chip up fairly quickly with heat, at least in my experiences, you know, using a hot air system. Alright, so we're ready to rock. Everything's cooled down enough to where we can actually get these out of the way. Once again, we're using the Scotle IR360 Pro version 1. I'm using infrared. I think in the near future I'll have a video of doing hot air, which I love the upper hot air system. It looks pretty sweet, and I love the nozzles that come with it. So we'll give that a little review here in the near future, but let's get this guy up. This is in there pretty well. We'll just move this out of the way. And I'm going to leave the probe in there, and I'm just going to use the probe on the machine because I don't want to finagle with that. That's in a pretty good spot here, you can see. So there it is, guys. You can see how dished that is. It's pretty crazy. But that's pretty much what it looks like. Got it kind of shielded away from the GPU there. That's it. Successfully pulling a CPU chip off a Zephyr board here. Everything looks good in the angle. You can't really see too well. That's it, guys. Alright guys, here we are. Here is the pre-NXE board. It's a Zephyr. It's the same exact one. So we are going to set this down. And you can see that it needs a little work right now. What I mean by that is we need to clean it up a little bit, and we have to get the epoxy off this one because I never did that. I did it for the GPU. This one actually would have been a working console, but I actually had some delamination, or I had this merge, and I couldn't separate the BGA pads. Excuse me. That actually, you know, they merged. I could not get them separated, so pretty much killed the board in a sense with that. You'll find that that's where you don't want to do too many pass-throughs. You want to get the right temperatures. You want to get the right braid, more or less. But let's get a nice shot of this, and we'll do the exact same thing I did before. Get that epoxy and get it all cleaned up. So first we're going to get a tight shot. We're going to get that chip cleaned up, and then we're going to remove the epoxy. Alright, as you can see, I didn't leave this too clean the last time. I was just messing around, and I, you know, pretty much I messed things up, so I'm like, oh well, whatever, I don't really care, I'll just save this board for later. And it turns out that I'm in need of a CPU for this other busted Zephyr, so perfect. Let's go ahead and get this all cleaned up. Alrighty, all nice and clean. Let's go ahead and fire up our AU here. Our temps should still be the same. We're at 230 with an airflow of 5. Let's get this. Alright, that's pretty much it. We got the epoxy off. Let's back out a little bit, and I'll show you all I do for it. Since it's a dead board, we'll back out and I'll show you what I do here just for protection. So here we are. All I'm going to do, you'll notice, like, hey, where's all those capacitors, you know, that are here? Well, I used those to repair another Zephyr board, so I took all those out. Surprisingly, the iron I have, the little 25 watter, actually took them out. But it was with flux. I had to flux it up pretty well, and all I'm going to do is just mildly, I'm just going to get these guys covered. Once again, the only reason why I'm doing this is just so I don't get any popping on me and I get that bad smell. So these guys have been through some heat. You can see I had some problems with my little temperature controller, and yeah, my bottom heater was just surging up to 400 degrees Celsius. So, you know, I was testing it, and I was just seeing if it was, you know, the computer, or not the computer, the actual temperature controller going out of whack, if it was just the display, and it shot right up to 400. I'm like, oh my goodness, and it blew a bunch of caps and on the other board. And this one I think I tested on as well. And it did, the capacitors do not like excessive heat. I think you're pushing it once you're around 240. I don't know, it's just my observation. So we're going to get this all tucked in on the machine here. I'm not too worried about the components on this one. I mean, I still got a good south bridge and a HANA here, RAM, all that good stuff. But the capacitors, they don't bother me too much. I'm losing those. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to flux this up now for a pull. So after we do this, pretty much we're into the home stretch. All we got to do is clean off the chip, reball it, and then reattach, and we're ready to rock, which is easy. So let's go ahead. I'll get a tight shot for you so you can see what's going on. Just like last time, it's a bead all the way around. I'm going to put just a little extra on this because I want a nice clean lift. Alright, we got the heater in place here. Now it's kind of hard to see. We're going to get this positioned up, and we're going to get our probe dialed in. Alright guys, here's a better shot for you, and we're just going to go right through the profile just like we did before to lift this one. We're still on the regular one, the lead-free lift, and let's do it. Alright guys, we're almost to temp here. The machine is outputting 220 Celsius right now, and there we are. We're still anchored down on this side a little bit. There we go. Make sure both sides give a little bit. You can tell, so vacuum, light away, up, on. Hopefully you can see this alright. No swish, pull it right up. I put the chip right down on a heatsink immediately. I don't mess around. So that's done. Turn the profile off, vacuum off. Move this out of the way. And you know, for this, we don't even need to clean it up. I mean, there's no reason. I'm only going to salvage parts off this, so pretty much we're done with this board. Let's just fire up the cooling, get that cool down, and get it off there. That's it, guys. Once again, we're around the same as before, almost 230. That's the typical lifting temp. So don't be alarmed if you shoot past 220 and it's like, oh man. Usually you're going to see around just under 230 to pull the CPU. It's a little bit hotter than the GPU. Okay, good. We're good to go. We're going to apply a little bit of flux. Spread this around. I'm trying to use a little less this time because every time I've showed you, I've pretty much dumped a quarter of the syringe on the chip, which you don't need to do. So let's grab our fine tip here. I shouldn't call it a fine tip, it's not too fine, but we'll go ahead and add some solder here. But before I do this, I'm going to get a tighter shot for you so you actually can see everything here. Alright, here we are. We're going to put some leaded solder on the tip here, quite a bit, and we're going to sweep this around on the chip. Get it all nice and cleaned up. Alright, we're good. Clean our tip off. And we want to go back to our solder braid here. So we'll put the other solder iron down. Grab the other angled tip. Make sure that's clean. Whoops. And we'll go ahead and start sweeping around with the braid on this. Right off the bat, I'm going to keep clipping this off too out here. Alright, now after we got that cleaned off, let's do some MEK and actually get it scrubbed down here. And as you're cleaning, you can kind of spin the Q-tip towards yourself like a backspin like this. You can see, kind of scrub it up and yeah, pretty good pass through there. I think we're good. Oh yeah, perfect. It's nice, you can kind of see how reflective it is once you've got it smooth like that. It's pretty neat. Go through and scrub it one more time. So once again, it's Superior Tachyflux. That's 8600 RMA, water soluble. You can't really see too well here on this, but this is what we've been using. And once again, this is not for reflows. This is just to get the balls attached back to the chip. So just like I did last time, I just put 2 little dots or 2 little grains, and you can kind of just work this all around the chip. That's all you need. Alright, make sure it's all even. There's not a ton on the sides. I've got my jig here again with the CPU. And what we got to do is, it's loose. I loosened up these screws you see here. And we can go ahead and position this. Now if I recall correctly, I'm just going to get this tightened down. Like I said, I've got my jig set up really high for the CPU. That's okay. Tighten this down and then we'll lower that. It looks like we're going to have to clean. I took this to the shop sink and actually cleaned it off, but got flux on my hands. I touched it all over again, so oh man. Perfect. Alright. So I think we've got a good amount on there. Just double check. So now we get to do just what we did before. It's actually get your solder balls. We'll bring this back into the shot here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour these in like I've been doing before. You can actually, we'll do it this way. There's another way where you can use a lot less and actually just kind of dust off the excess balls off into the corner there. So let me back out and I'll show you this here. We're going to do this style just like you see usually. We'll give it a little shake here. And we'll dump it right back in. Well, don't do it too fast. So we're missing one right here. Get just a tiny bit of flux on this little tool. And we'll reinsert this one here. Alright, let's see how we did here. Let's grab, I've got a little brush here to brush away the excess here. So we'll go ahead, just a little bit extra here. Alright. Sure we got them all in there. Let's lift. Very nice. It's the first CPU I've had actually with successful first lift. Good deal. So we'll do just like we did before. And we don't want to mess up our setup here, so be careful of your mat. We'll set this out here. And let's go over to the Scotle actually. I'm just going to double check everything here. Everything is lined up perfectly. So let's go over to the machine and get her fired up here, get it reattached. Okay, we're back at the board here, and what we're going to do is just take this off. This is the board we took the good CPU off of. So this guy we don't even care about really. This will just pop right off like that. And once again, just like last time, we're going to take the nozzle off, and we're also going to grab our two pieces here. One is going to go to block the nozzle. Once again, I might have a video on a mod showing you how to wire in a switch. I was going to do it the other day, but I couldn't find a switch that I liked, from Fry's Electronics, so we'll have to take a look. So once again, this should hit on one of these, and I think you can get away with going through on one of these. So usually I've made a burnt pattern already, so I can tell where I want my piece of wood. So you do this, make sure this is seated down nice. This is nice and secure. We'll get our probe in place here. And what I like to do is actually bring your jig right over here. Don't try to pick it out of the jig and then bring it here. Just actually bring your jig right up here. Pop it out as best you can. So the CPU, the balls are actually really close to the edge, so what you want to do is actually grab one of your hemostats here, or your tweezers. Try to do this without bumping your array here, like I almost did twice. Try picking that up. Okay, good. And then setting that down. Get that. Good thing is you didn't mess up any solder balls. We'll just do this, get it unhinged here. Get the jig out of the way. So we'll get the machine fired up. Now I'm going to be on profile number 1 on both sides. What that means is just turn the base plates down to 0. So we have no bottom plates now. Profile 1 on the lower hot air. We have 0. So profile 1, that's good. Profile 1 over here, we've got 190. It's good. Alright. And we'll get a better shot for you so you can actually see things happen here. Okay, here we are. Here's a little tighter shot of the chip. We're actually just going to fire it up. Actually, before we do, what I like to do just in case is I'm going to take one of these lights here and I'm actually going to review everything here. Now, I see a little piece of hair crossing over some of them, like somehow these little bits of hair, so I'm going to grab my tweezers actually. And we're just going to try to grab some of those out of there so we actually don't have to finagle it later, because they may hinder once in a while. That's why it's good to wear gloves too, or at least keep it away from some dust here. Okay, here we are. We're going to run through that profile up to 190. We probably won't need to, sometimes you need to let it sit for just a little bit on some chips, and for some reason it just needs to sit just a little bit. But usually we don't have to, so let's do that. We'll fire it up now. Little area. So what I like to do after that is the chip's pretty toasty. Just grab our tweezers. And I'm going to take this out of the shot, but what we're doing with the chip actually is I'm putting this right on a heat sink to get that off and out of the heat, out of the spotlight. So that's cooling down. So let's go ahead and back out of this real quick, and we'll get everything set up for the board actually, because we're on the home stretch for now. We're really on the home stretch now. Grab your nozzle, make sure it's square like before. Now we'll go back to our board. And the nice thing is I love leaded profiles, or reseating a leaded chip, because you don't have to go crazy with the huge temperatures you do with lead free, and all you have to do is put a thin glaze of Kingbo on there. So just gotta get back here. Just I enjoy it. It's the easiest part. Just put a thin glaze of that stuff on and make sure your chip is actually lined up with your bottom nozzle. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to plug in this probe again. I'm going to try to get you the best angle for taking a look at that seating back down, because a good buddy of mine, Keel, and I actually, he says it's his favorite part, and I have to agree it's mine too, so of the chip reattaching to the board. So let's make sure we're as close as we can get. Let me see how we look here for centered, being centered. Just turn it off. That's good. I'm going to tighten this down. Tighten this up a little bit. Now what we want to do is put our hemostats back on. Make sure we get the move perfect. See how everything's looking here. I'm looking underneath. Got my nozzle position back up right where it needs to be. That's out of the way. And let me get a better shot here so you can take a look at this. Okay. Last step we've got to do here is just take our Kingbo and we're going to apply a thin line like before. Just a little bit like that. We'll grab our little brush here that we've been using right along. And we'll kind of just get this all spread out. Just cross angle it here, take a look from this side, make sure you've got a good spread going. And my light setup here kind of blocks me from bending it, so I can get the top moved around. I didn't mention before that the GPU and CPU use the same diameter balls, the 0.60 millimeter. So you're good for doing both CPUs and GPUs with one solder ball. Once you get into the RAM, you're looking at the 0.45. I believe, yeah, the 0.45 for RAM. I'm just going to check, make sure there's no bristles sitting in there. So everything's good to go. chip here. I am going to brush this chip just a little bit with MEK, you know, my traditional, like how I do it with this. So I'm going to brush that just a little bit. Just make sure everything's seated well. Alright guys, we're all good to go. Got the chip all cleaned off and this all brushed off, so we're good there. So we've got the fresh, clean, fresh reball, clean chip. And just a little tip, a lot of you guys getting into this, you're like, oh man, right off the bat, how do I know which way this chip goes? Well, first of all, you'll see at the bottom here, there's that little corner. You can see that matches up right down here. But all of the chips, Microsoft put them so they all look this way. The Microsoft is going to be with the logo on the right side of the chip. Pretty much, it's on the GPU. You can't really see on the GPU right now, but it's the same that way and the same on the South Bridge. So they all kind of sit looking. The top logo is always on the top, on this side, on the right side. So we'll go ahead and get that aligned. Use my hands a little bit, and then I go over to my tool, my little tool I like to use here. Good here. Alright, looking good. That's it. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to place this here. I'm going to get the lights out of the way. I'm going to swing the top down. Get that positioned. But you won't be able to see anything too well right now. Get that centered. But yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like. It's just set right down like that. Let me get you a better angle here. Okay, here we are. We got our probe fitted on the left. Everything's good. All our lights are set up. Our profiles have been changed back to 0, which is where my reflow or lift and reflow profiles sit on the 0 setting here on the machine. We've got our plates turned back to 225. Both plates are on. So all we've got to do is pretty much just hit the start button, which we're going to do now. Alright guys, that's it. Profile's off. Lift this, bring this over, and start your infrared cooling on the top. And pretty much that's it, guys. We are all seated back down. What we want to do is grab the probe out of the way here. Just taking a look at it. It's definitely moved itself into place, and you'll see that actually on the fast forward. So pretty much all we got to do is wait until she cools down. So we'll do that, and we'll get right over to taking this tape off. I'll show you that once we do that. Pulling that off, we'll see. Actually, while we're looking at it, I'm looking at the capacitors right now. And they're doing okay. We are okay. Let's get this thing cooled down, and then we'll pull that tape out of there. Okay guys, here we are. We're all cooled down. We're totally room temperature, stone cold. We're going to pull the probe out first. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start from this side actually. And we're going to pull our tape up slowly but surely. Good. So now what we want to do is Just throw all our junk away. Get situated here. Alright, we're good. We're clean. And now what we'll do is we'll go over to the bench and we'll actually get some thermal paste on there, get the heat sinks back on. Then we still have to solder in our NAND points actually. And we got to program the new NAND that actually will match up to this, because I think we'll have a 0022 if we don't program the right NAND image. So let's go ahead and we'll get our hemostats taken off here. And right after that, we'll get it pulled from the machine over to the desk and get those NAND points soldered in. We can program that. And that's about it. Okay, before we actually get the thermal paste on there and everything, I'm actually going to grab my NAND points here and we're going to solder those in. So clean your tip off here. Your stuff. And I'm just going to solder these in real quick. Alright, we're all soldered in. Let's get the board some power so we can get that NAND programmed. Get that punched in here. We're going to use our JR programmer because somehow I zilched my NAND, so I'm going to have to get a new one. So I've been using this guy, the Speed Upgrade JR programmer. So we're going to get that going here. Get this plugged in. Go over to JRunner. Fired up, and we're going to open our file we have on the desktop, which is our alright, so we're going to write that to the NAND. Zipper. Alright. Okay, we're writing that NAND over, and we'll be back in a little bit here. Alright, sweet, so we're done programming the NAND. We're just going to unplug this guy, unplug this one, and now I just like to go over just to make sure everything's nice and clean. I'm going to grab some MEK and a Q-tip and I'm just going to clean the dies here. Got some of my fingerprints on just so that's nice and clean. Okay, good. So I had got a deal at Fry's Electronics. They had a ton of thermal paste they were getting rid of for $5 a pop, and this stuff actually works pretty good, so we'll apply that. But it comes out really fast, as you can see, and we don't need that much. But alright, this stuff's like in between the Arctic Silver and the other ceramic stuff. Pretty interesting. Once again, I use my finger because I can tell how even it is spread on there. You don't need a ton. Just make sure it's covering the entire top of the chip. The dies, rather. This guy has quite a bit on it. So, we've got the correct NAND already programmed in. So if it was a CPU problem, and it still gives me 0101, we may be looking at Southbridge error. But we'll see. Curious to know if it is or not. So what we'll do real quick is we'll just scrape off the extra let's say on the heat sinks from last time, because that will come right off. And we'll fit these up and we'll be ready to give her a test run. Alright, that's clean. Let's get this guy cleaned. Once again, once you clean off the original stuff from the factory and put your own on, it's way easier to clean off if you have to next time around. So let's go ahead, we'll get NAND points out of the way, and first what I like to do is actually put the CPU one on. Once again, the loop goes out in between these capacitors right here. I've made the mistake of putting them on backwards many times. It's like, oh, come on! But let's do it. Get this on here, seat that down nice and tight. Put this down this way, that way we don't pull it up. Be careful because there's a lot of surface mount components right below the CPU and you don't want to nick those, because let me tell you, they're a real pain to replace. So, grab our tool here, X-clamp removal tool, we'll get all this seated down. And these X-clamps, I had to bend them because there's a little issue with them, but man, they really work this time around. Okay, so we got that, that's good. This one you can hold with your hand, and try to get the ones that are closer together first over on this side. This person likes to hang up on that. Like I said, I wrenched these back into place, and boy, they're really snug now, so let's see if we can get it here so you can see it. One more to go. And we get to fire up and see what's what. So this is Zephyr once again, and it had a weird error code on it before I did the GPU reball. And then it went to 0101. Everything looks good. I don't see anything that's out of place. I went through the whole board, but let's give this a shot. Power, we got the RF board, now we just need to get the fans plugged in, and let's do HDMI. Turn my test telly on. Now I just gotta find the fans. Got so many in front of me. Ah, there they are. Alright, HDMI 1, which is what we want to be on. Got the fans, so the moment of truth. Let's see if that fixed it. Here we go. Let's hold our breath. Well, that did not fix it. So we're still with a 0101. 02. Okay, so that's GPU related. So that's the thing that happens here. We'll probably go through. Since I got the temperatures up quite a bit to pull this, I'm thinking that we might have messed up our GPU. I've had this happen before. So we'll have to go through and redo that again. So, but now, that's interesting, 0102. So I guess the CPU was messed up on the other one, but see, that was successful in a sense. That we did change the error code, so it was a CPU issue to begin with. Now we're dealing with GPU. Okay guys, you know, in the last bit of the video here I showed you that it was a 0102 after everything was said and done. I did all this stuff to it. I did, boy, it's had a GPU reball that you didn't see, and then this whole video we've been talking about the CPU swap, which we did, and we still got the 0102 at the end of it. Well, I'm going to show you here at the end, or maybe as I'm talking now or at the end of the video, I had to repair like 7 traces that were actually was a terrible, like, it's the worst screwdriver fault I've ever seen. Like a huge gouge underneath that was feeding into the RAM on the left side of the board here. The underside on this side, well, I spent the whole day looking around on the internet, and I'm going to give you the link to this because I've never really seen how to repair traces that well. I've done like 1 or 2 trace repairs here and there, but I got to show you this link. Anyways, that CPU swap, that brings the dash down to 7371 from before. I think what this was an 8367 or something like that. It was something, it had 5 updates through it. It wasn't too, I mean, it barely was used. So here it is, guys. After the trace repair, it's had a GPU reball, a CPU swap, and trace repair. Seriously, guys, it's been the most in-depth console repair I've done. It's gone through a whole bunch of stuff. Well, I think I've had a Xenon that's a close competitor, but that's that, guys. Just wanted to show you that just keep checking your board over. I mean, pretty much now you've seen how a CPU swap looks, and also we'll show you at the end of this video what a trace repair looks like. And it's the trace repair is before I put any clear nail polish over it. So that's it, guys. Thanks for catching the video, and glad I could get it working for you to show you some successful repair here out of XJonnyGunsX repairs and mods. Alright, guys, you take it easy and we'll catch up to you soon. See you guys.